And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's RBLR Sports.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Whenever you're listening to this, Buccaneers fans and listeners, we are live, and we are so happy to have you all tuned in with the RBLR Buccaneers Familia. Maybe you're listening to this from another state or country, or perhaps you're locked in with us on this lovely day in the Bay. You know, ladies and gentlemen, I woke up today feeling optimistic. Sure, it's the off season, but things are still happening. Free agency moves are being made. The Lightning won this weekend. Spring training is here for our Rays. The Rowdy season starts soon. And you know what? We are 1 week closer to the NFL draft and the regular season. So a lot of things to be happy about if you ask me. Also, folks, I want to give a special shout out to two guys who also happen to be my fellow co-hosts of this show, grueling through the offseason with me. Pulling up to the scene is the dynamic duo. You know, the Evans and Godwin of the RBLR Bucs. So we'll start to my right. We got Mr. Zach Blaine in the house. Zach, are you feeling optimistic as I am just because there are some things going on? Or are you kind of feeling really blue and you sit by your window every Sunday wishing there was some football?
I mean, a little bit of both. I got to know, first off, who's Godwin and who's Evans in this situation, because
I was gonna leave that to y'all. Yeah,
I'll let you be God, or I'll let you be Evans, Zach. I'll be Godwin since I know you don't like him.
You're so sweet to me. No, it's been a good week so far, man. My little sister just had a baby yesterday, so I became an uncle again.
Congratulations.
I haven't been thinking too much football this week.
I don't blame you, dude. I don't blame you. But might have to blame Carter Brantley because I don't know if he got any new babies in the family, but maybe he does. I don't know.
No, no new children in the Brantley family that I'm aware of, at least. I mean, Lord knows what actually happens in my family that I don't know that goes on. But yeah, also, Musab, I would be remiss if you didn't mention the Bulls, bro. Go Bulls!
Man, you know, I don't know, man. I don't know. I was just thinking about professional teams. Totally forgot about our beloved Bulls. But hey, shout out to the USF Bulls. They beat Tulane yesterday, I think, by like 12, 13 points or something like that. So phenomenal. And yeah, go Bulls, baby.
Go Bulls. Yeah. Okay, sorry. It's a great time to be a Bulls fan. I tell you what, the tickets are mad expensive, but hey, it's because the Bulls are winning. So anyways, yeah, like Saab mentioned, there's some happenings going on in the football scene because, you know, this is a Bucs show. We're sitting here talking about the USF Bulls college basketball season. But we'll start with the big one because this was the biggest news from this past week for the Bucs. Mike Evans, he's not going anywhere. He's going to be a Buck for the next 2 years, at least. You know, this is what he re-signed for. It was originally reported that it was around 2 years in the late 50s, but it's now being reported that it's 2 years, $41 million. I got to be honest, I was a bit surprised to see the number go down because I thought that the 2 year 56 or whatever the case may be was about right for Evans, but 2 years, $41 million, that's only $20 million a year. I mean, that's kind of interesting. Did y'all expect more in either category? Like maybe y'all expected a 4-year deal or a 3-year deal? Musab, we'll start with you, man. What were your thoughts on the Evans deal?
Well, first of all, I was really happy. I mean, I know we discussed this, I think, like last week or the week before, if we had to give up Winfield, Baker, or Evans. And I know I said Evans, but Evans is like the face of our franchise. And I'm really happy we were able to re-sign him, of course. Now, when it comes to the money situation, from what the vibe I'm getting is, you know, Jason Light in the front office, they're going to work their magic. And I'm sure however it's finalized to be, it works out for us, especially with that kind of salary cap situation we're trying to figure out. But for me, I think more importantly, I think he's just happy he got paid. Of course, we have to think about, you know, he's getting older as well. So I think this was kind of a typical negotiation situation. Kind of, you know, team starting low, Mike Evans kind of shooting high, and then finally meeting in the middle. I don't know. That's just kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an unrealistic path for Evans and a more realistic path. And it seemed like they kind of met in the middle. I like that. It was definitely a negotiation, the weird kind of chirping back and forth. I don't even want to call it chirping because that's dramatic, but Light was like, it's going to be a financial strain. And then Evans was all, oh, well, I want to be somewhere where I'm a Super Bowl contender with an elite quarterback and yada, yada, yada. Just a lot of blammering and yammering on for no good reason, but it's all for naught. Evans is a Buck. It's no worries. Zach, how about you, man? What were your thoughts on this deal?
Yeah, for me, the scary part is we're going to be back in this situation in 2 years. I was hoping for a longer contract. The money, I like the money. I like where the money's at. I'm not going to lie to you. I believe he got $35 million guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's big for players nowadays, and I respect it. So the fact that he's got that guarantee and he's only costing us $20 million a year, I think he's worth more than that. I believe that puts him at like the 12th highest paid wide receiver right now. And that's before free agency even starts. So he's going to get bumped down probably a few spots. And to look at that and like, there's not 12 wide receivers better than him in the league. So for me, I think we got a steal, and I'm happy about it.
Yeah, and I feel you. It was a bit surprising. I thought he was going to kind of make this his last contract in the NFL. I was a bit surprised to see it a little bit reduced, but at the same time, unfortunately, like I think we were all kind of waiting for Father Time to catch up to him, and it hasn't. Don't get me wrong, and I don't expect it to next season either. But it comes for everyone. It comes for everyone eventually. So from the Bucs standpoint, they wanted to kind of. They wanted to keep Evans because it's a franchise player at the wide receiver position. But at the same time, you got to be realistic, got to be doing what's best for the team and not kind of setting yourself up for failure. Like we were talking off show about the Buffalo Bills cutting everyone. And part of the reason they're having to do that is because they signed Von Miller to a 7-year contract, and he's been awful. Like he's a healthy scratch. So they don't want to put themselves in that situation. So I kind of understood where that was coming from. But on the flip side, there's still one of the other 3 unsigned, Baker Mayfield. So how does Evans being back affect Baker's signing? Zach, I'll start with you since you're the president of the Baker Mayfield fan club. How do you think this affects the Baker signing moving forward?
I was a lot more confident until some of the stuff that I read today popped off on my timeline. So
really,
I'm still confident. I don't think he's taking the hometown discount he kind of made it sound like he was going to take if we brought Evans back. I was honestly, when I woke up this morning, was expecting to see something on my phone about Baker. Baker's been signed for a 3-year deal. Like I was hoping for it, but right now it just seems like I think we're going to wait a little while for Baker to sign. I think he's going to test out free agency and see where he's at before we get him to sign. I don't think that Evans signing is enough for him to be like, yeah, you know what? I don't need to see all the other offers. I'm coming back.
Wow, that's interesting, man. It sounds like the baby's scared of that too. Good gracious.
I'm telling you, she's having a howler over it, bro.
The whole Blaine household is freaking out about Baker Mayfield.
We're hurting over here, man.
Now I'm picturing Zach just waking up in the morning, like turning on his phone, like kicking his legs in the air, like, "Ooh, did Baker sign? Did Baker sign?"
And then he didn't, and I just roll back over.
Yeah, and then you're like,
"Oh, rainy day today."
Yeah, all disappointed. But Musab, how about you, man? Maybe you're a little less gloom about it. Maybe you're a bit more excited. How do you think this affects Baker's deal moving forward?
I think it's definitely a big factor for sure. I mean, what you already mentioned with, Mike Evans mentioned that, hey, I want to be on a Super Bowl kind of contender team. Now that we got Mike Evans back, I mean, this is kind of a big piece. It's definitely a big influence for sure. And now, as Zach mentioned, obviously from what I've been seeing when it comes to Baker Mayfield's contract and, what's going on, they're kind of pretty far from, completing something. Obviously, but what I will say though is this is just because this is like brand new news for us. I don't think we should be too kind of concerned just yet. I think there's a lot of time, and I think this is just something we should have expected. Okay, because you have people like, for example, Daniel Jones, who's being paid, I don't know, like
a lot of money.
40,
yeah, a lot of money.
Exactly, $40 million a year, and that was one of the things I saw.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my buddy's a Giants fan, and he was kind of really shocked by that as well. So look at that. So, you're thinking maybe Baker's agent or his team saying, well, look at Daniel Jones. But then the Buccaneers organization's looking at it from another lens. You're looking at someone like, I don't know, like Geno Smith, I know is not being paid too much. Okay. So it's like, okay, well, there's Geno Smith. So it's like a Daniel Jones versus Geno Smith. You know, obviously the Bucs are going to kind of start low because they want to get the best deal out of it. Baker is trying to get, you know, the most money out of it. Typical kind of negotiating situation. I think it will take a little bit of time. I don't think it's going to happen soon. I am with Zach on that. I think he's going to test out the waters for sure. But I think it's a little too early to be just concerned just yet. Yeah.
I think the crazy part is you brought up the Daniel Jones situation, and I don't know if you guys saw anything about Rich Eisen this week coming back from the combine and saying the Giants were having buyer's remorse already. I think if Baker's agent was smart, he'd be like, okay, so he's getting paid $40 million, but that team's not going anywhere. They're not going to do anything, and now the Giants want him off of the roster essentially. Yes, he's making $40 million, but he's not making $40 million with the love of all the fans and the support of the front office.
Yeah, he's making $40 million, and they're thinking about drafting a quarterback with their first round pick.
Exactly, that's wild. So
yeah, it's brutal.
I understand where they're comparing him, like from his agent standpoint, but also like realistically, you can't even compare the two because it's such a drastic. Like they loved him last year, and this year they're like, we want him gone because he's making that much money.
Yeah, and I also want to chime in because I'm right there with you, Zach. Baker is not Daniel Jones when it comes to that kind of off the field personality and stuff. You know,
yeah, he's not boring.
yeah, exactly. He's not boring. I don't ever remember anyone saying that, oh man, Daniel Jones, like, you know, this guy's really got the team fired up. He's a dog and all that. You know, that's Baker Mayfield. You know, you want him to kind of hop from squad to squad during their little team lunch, you know, talking to every single position, you know, gathering up the troops. That's who Baker is. So, yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't think this is kind of a good comparison. So maybe I should take that back. But
no, it's not even you. Because that's exactly what I read today was that agent is using that comparison. And so, like, we have to take that from what we're hearing. Like, I agree with you. That's what they're comparing it to. I just think it's a silly comparison on his agent's part because of the situation the Giants are in.
Yeah, it's also a cautionary tale for the Bucs. Yeah. The Bucs should respond with, "Why are you bringing this up, man? Like this is something that's gone wrong with another franchise. Like
you just screwed me out of $40 million a year. Thank you."
Yeah, exactly. Like this is not a good look. Like this is not ideal. Exactly. I do think it would be interesting to see how the structure of the contract plays out because what they could do is they could kind of find a middle ground to where they give him maybe not quite Daniel Jones money, but a big money, but with, you know, incentives built in, maybe guaranteed money set aside or non-guaranteed, just so that, you know, because the Giants are kind of SOL, they're stuck with Daniel Jones. But I remember the Teddy Bridgewater contract with Carolina a few years ago. It was I don't want to say it was a similar situation to Baker, but it was kind of that same kind of vibe where Teddy was a backup for a while, but he was a starter to begin his career. So now he was kind of venturing back into starting quarterback territory. So I could see Baker maybe taking on one of those kind of contracts. But, you know, Daniel Jones got $40 million, whether it's a bad deal or not, that's what happened. So I'm sure it's being brought up in negotiations, like Musab said, whether it's a good or a bad thing, you know, it's getting brought up. So I just thought that was really interesting. But another thing from this Mike Evans thing, since we're talking about Baker and Mike Evans, was that, you know, one of the quotes that he had was he wanted elite quarterback play from whoever he signs with. So I do have a couple questions because Zach was in our little Discord group. You know, he had his. So I'm going to kind of give him the spotlight for a second because I want to hear what he has to say to defend this take. First of all, I want to hear what constitutes an elite quarterback, and then does Baker Mayfield fit that category? So Zach, take it away, man. To answer those two questions.
Okay. So I feel like I've got to be very clear in as much as I love Baker, I got to tell you guys, I don't think he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. I'm just pointing that out.
Wow.
I'm not saying
scorching.
With this being said, I'm not saying he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. I'm saying there are quarterbacks who are elite with their teams who make players look good.
Okay.
You look at guys who have played with a quarterback and then gone to another team and done terrible. Like it happens. So my point is Michael Vick with Atlanta, elite, right? You don't think Michael Vick with Atlanta was an elite quarterback?
He put up some very mediocre numbers in Atlanta, but since he was on the cover of Madden and he gets 99 speed in Madden, I think people overhype him a little bit. But I think that's just me, though. That's just me, though. I could be very wrong.
I would say he was an elite quarterback.
Okay, fair enough.
But then he went to the Steelers.
I'm with you, Zach. He was a beast.
Exactly. He was an elite quarterback on Atlanta. Went to the Steelers, was not elite anymore. My point is, I think Mike Evans said he wanted an elite quarterback, and Mike Evans put up the third highest receiving yards he's ever put up, I believe, second highest touchdowns he's ever put up in a season. It's tied for second, I believe. And then led the league in touchdowns for the first time in his career. I don't want you to think that I'm saying Baker Mayfield is a top 5 quarterback, but I am saying for Mike Evans, he is an elite quarterback.
Okay. I can see that a little bit. I don't know. It's tough because in my mind, like, the definition of elite quarterback isn't just like that he makes the players around him better, that a player happens to have a career year at the same time. I'm not saying they're not correlated. I'm not saying that Baker didn't have anything to do with it. That's not my goal there. But, if the correlation, it's not one, like, it's not a complete total correlation. Like, Mike Evans certainly had a little bit to do with it as well. But I do see what you're
100%.
saying. I don't know. It's tough because, man, he's had one really solid year, and he was still like maybe 12th or 13th in most statistical categories, right? Like in estimated points added, passing yards, all that stuff. He was around that range. And that's with Joe Burrow being injured, with Aaron Rodgers being injured, like countless quarterback injuries. So I don't know if I can call him elite because it's tough to put that label on a guy after one solid year. Previously, he was kind of mid, like he was pretty rough.
So let me ask you this, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many games do you think Baker Mayfield kept us in this year that we shouldn't have been in?
I don't know. That's a tough hypothetical question to ask. I guess if I had to say maybe 3 or 4, that's kind of on the high end, though. Realistically, it's probably 1 or 2 that he.
Yeah, I would have said 4. That was what I was thinking.
Fair enough.
There was a few games where we should have. I mean, the last playoff game against Detroit. If Baker kept us in that game, I mean, our defense let us down.
Right. Yeah.
So Baker kept us in that game with big time throws when they were needed.
For sure.
I guess my thing is an elite quarterback shows up when it's time to show up, and Baker had, in my opinion, 2 bad games this year, like 2 really bad games.
Right.
So for you to go in a 17-game season, have 2 bad games, 15 solid ones, not great. There was a few great ones and a few good ones, but he only had 2 really bad games, in my opinion. That's an elite season.
For sure. Yeah, it's a really good season.
Probably the second best Tampa Bay quarterback season ever.
Ooh, man, that's getting into some dangerous territory because
statistically, I think that he did what only Tom Brady's done on a couple of occasions this year.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I'd probably put him third under the book 2 of the Tom Brady seasons. But Musab, how about you, man?
I'm just saying quarterback names. I'm not saying just his seasons. Yeah,
for sure, absolutely. But Musab, how about you, man? Because this is just the Carter Brantley and Zach Blaine.
No worries at all. I'm all ears, gentlemen. But what I will say is, I don't want to say I'm in the middle, but I mean, it's just hard for me to say that Baker Mayfield is an elite quarterback. I do agree with Zach saying that, yeah, he does make people like Mike Evans look good. And I do love what he's done for us for sure.
Absolutely.
But Carter, as you mentioned, the way he's kind of ranked out with the rest of the quarterbacks in this league this past season, this is probably not a good analogy or something, but the way I see Baker Mayfield is like, he's like that sophomore who's on the varsity team. He's too good for JV, but he doesn't get that many reps in varsity, AKA varsity being the elite. You know what I'm saying? So he can be kind of part of that pool, that little conversation pool of elites. But, I mean, he's not someone that you would definitely be, yapping about, oh, this guy's elite for sure. And what I will also want to say is, I mean, it's something like that for me, especially because he's only been on the Buccaneers for 1 year. It's too soon for me to actually say that. Who knows how things happen this next year or so. But I have to say, though, I am a lot optimistic because I think we're going to get a lot more protection for Baker. I think we're going to work some things out on the defensive end, which just makes our Buccaneers organization look better. That way we'll seal more wins. So, yeah, I'll just leave it at that, though.
Just to add on, he did all of this year with essentially no running game until the second half of the season.
For sure. Yeah, I mean,
is an important thing.
Right.
I know Eureka's in the chat telling us that where he ranked and everything. This is all without a run game. A quarterback I compared him to in the chat, and I got some slack for it, was Eli Manning, right? Look, I'm not high on Eli Manning. Don't like the guy. I like him now that he's not playing football. But as a football player, I hated him. But there is going to be serious conversations that he gets into the Hall of Fame. And
right.
I'm rooting against it. I don't think he should be. But there is going to be, when it comes his time, there's going to be a debate that he is a Hall of Fame player. With that being said, the first 5 years on NFL player comparisons, in the regular
the NFL player comparison.
Hey, listen.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Zach, I don't like any of those comparisons. I feel like things are just so early, you know.
In the first 5 years of their career, Baker leads touchdown passes, passing yards, completion percentage. Let's see what else we got. Pass completions, less interceptions, and they're tied on touchdowns.
Okay, so your ultimate thesis is that Baker Mayfield has been better through his first 5 years of his career than Eli Manning.
And then at the end of that is, God forbid Baker win a Super Bowl, then people are going to be like, oh, well, if Eli's in, then Baker's in. That's all I'm saying.
But if Baker Mayfield wins the Super Bowl, then yeah, he has a case to maybe make it into the Football Hall of Fame. Like that's not a crazy thing to say, because he would have to be really productive to do that, and he would have to have a really good season, and he would ultimately have a ring. And then Eli Manning has 2 rings. So like, you know, Eli Manning's also 10th in passing yards.
I'm not comparing rings. That's why I did regular season.
Okay, sure. But regardless.
But all I'm saying is, theoretically, Eli Manning is a maybe Hall of Fame quarterback, and through their first 5 years of their career, Baker is on track with statistics-wise. I'm not going off awards and stuff because Eli sweeps them away with awards. I'm not denying that. But statistics-wise, Baker is right there with Eli.
I'd also be interested to see era comparisons, because like Baker Mayfield this past season, the past 5 years have been a very pass-heavy league. Like there's
and that's fair. That's fair.
I don't think we'll because it's sort of like saying like there was that period of baseball where they were hitting the crap out of the ball. The balls were juiced. Everyone was taking steroids. You know, the steroid era. Like 40 home runs in that era. Like, don't get me wrong. It's a big deal, but it's not a huge deal. 40 home runs in the 1960s, that's a big deal. You know what I mean? So I do think that era comparisons would be kind of interesting, like in the context of where Eli ranked amongst other quarterbacks. I think that's kind of something important to keep in mind. But regardless, Eli Manning's also 10th in passing yards and passing touchdowns all time. So that's also something kind of important to keep in mind as well for this discussion. But I thought it was kind of an interesting thing to bring up because, man, Eli Manning and Baker Mayfield are just 2 very different quarterbacks in my mind. But hey, Zach Blaine brought it up, so I wanted to bring it to the world, bring it to the mass audience.
I got to point out something too, because Eureka just said something in our chat. Our producer said that my stance was that he's a little bit better than the quarterback I didn't think was elite. I'm not saying he wasn't elite. I said I didn't like him. I don't want him in the Hall of Fame because I don't like him. I'm not saying he's not elite. So I'm just getting that out of the way.
Well, he's saying we let you off the hook, but, we've got other stuff to talk about other than this philosophical debate about Baker Mayfield being elite. Jeez Louise. But anyways, moving on from the Baker Mayfield elite conversation, because, who knows? We can sit here and talk about Baker Mayfield being elite all night and day. And after next season, he could be, out of a starting job because he plays like crap, or he could be a Pro Bowler and the Bucs could be winning playoff games. Who knows? It could be all over the place. But another big thing that happened this past week, Antoine Winfield Jr. got franchise tagged. So I thought that was kind of interesting. People are kind of expecting him to reset the safety market if they're able to reach an extension. What are y'all's thoughts on it? Do you think that the Bucs would be better off just letting them play out the tag, for 1 year, or do you think that they should just kind of, hey, let's get this done, 3 years, 60 million? That's kind of the reported figure. Let's just get this done and get it over with. Musab, we'll start with you, man. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, my thoughts, and based on what I've read and what I've heard, I believe this kind of franchise tag is kind of just a placeholder for that extension. So, I mean, that's kind of just the vibe I have right now. Is that's exactly how it's going to turn out. Yeah, I don't think we should tag him if we can just extend him out, just because it is going to be a little bit more costly on our cap space. Of course, I believe he'll be getting 17.5 million. Is that what you just said? Yeah. So. Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of just where I stand right now. Obviously, I mean, I'm really happy we're definitely able to kind of keep him for sure. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you brought up a great point, because extending him allows them to work in some dead years to make it just more viable for the cap this year, like you mentioned, because the cap just keeps going up, and, you know, so the Bucs can kind of keep kicking the can down the road, because eventually, you know, the cap's just going to be massive. So, yeah.
Plus, we got some wizards. We got some wizards in the front office, like Jason
that's
Light.
right. That's right. Yeah, people talk about the Saints, but man, the Bucs aren't far behind. The NFC South's got two of the best salary cap people in the NFL.
100% agreed with you.
Yes, super impressive.
I hate the Saints and all you Saints fans, but I respect your GM and his ability to make magic happen.
For sure, they finessed the shit out of it. Zach, how about you, man? What you think? Antoine Winfield Jr. is going to get an extension?
Yeah, I think I am not a fan of the franchise tag at all. I think it's dumb. I always have. It takes me back to who was I believe it was Earl Thomas, hurt his leg and got off and was flipping off the dogs on the way out. Right. It just, to me, that is a sign of bad blood. Like, if you franchise somebody, it means you don't think they're worth extending, but you don't want them to go. It's like one of those toxic relationships where, like, I don't want to be with you, but also I don't want anyone else to have you. So it just, I've never been a fan of it. I think Antoine deserves to reset the market for safeties. I think he's the best safety in the league. I'll stand on that hill. And I just think that it gets done. I am cool with paying him $20 million a year. I think he's earned it. And I think he is probably, outside of Levante David, the heartbeat of this defense.
Yeah, I'm with you on all those points, especially the franchise tag being stupid. My God, it's essentially just what baseball used to do by just, you know, the reserve clause, you know, just making, you know, keeping players around and not letting them explore other options. You know, it violates antitrust agreements. It's nasty as hell, but that's not the subject of this podcast. I could keep going on that. But yeah, I'm hoping, I'm with y'all, hoping an extension gets done. It seems like that's realistic. It seems like that's going to get done. So yeah, really excited to see that news trickle in, you know, get the notification on ESPN or whatever the case may be saying Antoine Winfield Jr. and the Bucs agree to an extension. And if you want to be ready for that news, if you want to be decked out for when you get the Antoine Winfield Jr. extension news, then definitely check the RBLR shop. We've got some really fire gear on there for the Rays, Bucs, Lightning, and Rowdies. Shop.rblrsports.com is where you can find it, because like Musab mentioned at the beginning of the show, the Lightning are playing right now. They're winning some games. The Rays are in spring training. And the Rowdy season is about to begin as well. So you definitely got to get some gear to get ready for all that. So we'll give you a 10% off code as well to celebrate all the Tampa sports happenings right now. And that promo code is Cannon, CANNONS. You type that bad boy in, you get a 10% off coupon for your entire order. So definitely check that out for sure. So after that shameless shop plug, we are going to move on to some realistic free agent targets. Well, realistic and unrealistic later in the show for the Bucs, because free agency is about to start. I mean, good gracious, the Bills had a little fire sale, or not fire sale, but just they put everyone on the chopping block. It seemed like every single player was getting cut. So things are happening. So what better time like the present to start talking about some guys that maybe the Bucs could bring in outside of just their, you know, re-signings. So we'll start on the offensive side of the ball for the realistic free agent targets. Musab, we'll start with you, man. What are some offensive free agent targets that you're looking at for the Bucs?
Yeah, sure. So my first one, I got J.K. Dobbins. Okay. You know, injuries have kind of, you know, messed him up during his NFL career, but I think that he could definitely help out Rachaad White for sure. I mean, this guy racks up about 3 yards after carry. I think that's kind of going to be helpful. And I mean, that's something we need in the long run for sure. If we want to have any success in our run game, I mean, Rachaad White's going to need to have someone with him. And then my next two are just this one I was kind of just a little iffy about just because of how appealing the Buccaneers looked at him. And that's offensive guard. We actually I believe he's a right guard. John Feliciano from the 49ers. Overall, he finished like 81.2 overall with the blocking grade, kind of outstanding, even run blocking grade as well with 87. Now, the good thing about him, especially thinking about the whole kind of center right guard situation with Stanion, Robert Hainsey, the good thing about him is he's versatile. So, if needed be, we can put him at the right guard stance or at center, depending on whatever happens during this offseason and who we draft as well. Last but not least, just because we need Cade Otton some help, I'm thinking Austin Hooper from the Raiders. He is more kind of like an established blocker. I think we need someone to kind of take the kind of heavy duty kind of block work off from Otton, and I think he's good. I think we'll be able to kind of get him for a cheap price. And he's got a little bit of experience as well with Baker Mayfield in Cleveland, so I think that's nice. Did solid last season, so I think this could be someone that would be helpful for sure.
Absolutely. Love all those picks. Definitely the Hooper one as well. Because you said the Baker thing was great. And yeah, taking a little bit of pressure off of Cade Otton, because my goodness, I think he played like a ridiculous amount of snaps last year, and that's just not good for anyone.
Yeah, a whole lot of snaps, and O'Keefe was O'Keefe.
A lot of touchdown pass.
Hey, he did indeed. Yeah, so I'm with you. They definitely need some tight end help. Whether it's through free agency, the draft, it's definitely going to be addressed at some point. Zach, how about you, brother? What are your free agency picks?
I think it's kind of funny because I have the exact same three positions. I've got guard Ezra Cleveland from Jacksonville. He is probably the most realistic one I have. I do think that he could cost himself out of our range. Mm-hmm. But if we get the chance to get him and we can grab him, I think that he's a versatile guard, can play either side, and I think he upgrades us at guard right away. And he's still only 25. I think he'll be 26 this next season, so he's still really young. Then I've got Noah Fant out of he's on Seattle now.
Yeah.
He is a guy who, I mean, the potential when he came out of the draft is just ridiculous.
For sure.
And he just hasn't lived up to that yet. So he's more of we're signing him based on his potential, not based off what he's done. It frees up Cade Otton to not have to play 99% of the snaps. And not hating on Cade Otton, I think he's a more vertical threat of a tight end than Cade Otton is. And I think that would work well in our system. And then last, my running back is Kareem Hunt. He's had a couple of down years. Last year, he came back, midway through the season and still did really solid for Cleveland. I don't think he's going to be expensive. If we can get him for like $3 million a year, $3 or $4 million a year, I'd be happy with that. And I think he brings us a different run style than what Rachaad White is. I'm not hating on Rachaad anymore. I still don't think that he is a running back one, but I think he is one of the best receiving backs in the league. And I will gladly give him those flowers. So to have a power back, like, not that Kareem Hunt is just a power back, but he's shown that he can hit the hole and he's not worried about who's hitting him. So that's why I think we should go after Kareem Hunt as our running back. He's probably my number one free agent, if I'm being honest with you.
Fair enough. Yeah. He had some productive years in Cleveland as well. And he was in Kansas City for a little bit. He's certainly an interesting target for sure. I think we all agreed that they need to sign a running back and a tight end. So that's kind of tough. I'll go ahead and give mine as well. Mine are kind of, a little bit, kind of like y'all's, very, very low cost options, just because the Bucs, we keep talking about the salary cap situation. There's re-signing a bunch of guys that are expensive. So, my first one is running back Damian Harris from the Bills. He was with the Patriots for a little while, had some decent years in New England. And he didn't really get a whole lot of play in Buffalo just because, James Cook exploded this year. He was one of the best running backs in football this past season. So they didn't really have a lot of room for him. He also suffered a scary neck injury, unfortunately, but he seems to be all right. He seems to be bouncing back just fine. And the good news for the Bucs is he'll likely be a little bit of a low cost type of guy, probably even more so than Kareem Hunt, just because, even his good years, quote unquote, aren't necessarily amazing. They're not going to blow you out of the water. So I thought that he was kind of an interesting guy. He came out of Alabama in college. So that was my first pick. The next one is Irv Smith Jr. out of Cincinnati. Well, he was from the Cincinnati Bengals. He was originally drafted by the Minnesota Vikings, also out of Alabama, I believe. So he had a tough year last year. He was not very productive in Cincinnati, and they didn't really have any other tight end options established. They brought him in thinking that he would be their starter, and he just didn't work out, unfortunately. He was basically just a non-factor. He was a healthy scratch a lot of the times towards the end of the year. Super athletic guy who would be kind of in the Noah Fant, but a little lesser than Noah Fant. Excuse me. If Noah Fant doesn't work out, they could hit up Irv Smith Jr. and see if he's interested. He'll also be really cheap, just a solid depth guy to have to, like we've been saying, take the pressure off of K. Dotton so that he's not playing so many darn snaps. And then my last one's not technically a free agent yet, I believe. Terrace Marshall Jr., wide receiver for Carolina. He's an LSU guy. I love my LSU guys, especially wide receivers. He just never really settled into Carolina. Last year, he requested a trade in the middle of the year. It was kind of weird. But Carolina's just such a mess. It's kind of hard for anyone to settle in at this point. I don't necessarily blame him for trying to get out of there. I really liked him at LSU. I mean, I really like a lot of guys out of LSU, so I guess I'm not really saying much. But he's only going to be 24. He could be a really nice depth piece or competitor for the wide receiver 3 spot, since the Bucs are likely moving on from Russell Gage. So that kind of does it for the offensive side of the ball for the realistic options. But how about defense for y'all? What are some options on the defensive side of the ball that are realistic for the Bucs this offseason in free agency? Zach, we'll start with you, brother.
I only got 2 that I really like. And that is Jordan Whitehead. Bring him home
for sure.
To be here. We need another safety. I don't think he's going to be crazy expensive. I don't think he's going to be cheap, but I don't think he's going to be crazy expensive. He's a guy that's just got a nose for the ball. There's not much you can see him doing wrong, I guess, is how I look at it with him. And he already kind of knows Todd Bowles' system, so it just makes it a little bit easier. And then the other one is sort of a big name, but Jadeveon Clowney. He's former really high draft pick and then kind of fell off, and last year had a really good season, or a pretty good season. I wouldn't say really good, but a pretty good season. So I think he's one of those veterans that comes in, gets a 1 or maybe 2-year deal, but isn't crazy expensive. And I think he would improve our edge rush immediately.
Yeah, and he could be a great mentor as well, because he's been there, done that, experienced the highs and the lows. He was a first overall pick, and then he kind of torpedoed and wasn't really super great for a little bit there. But yeah, he was real productive in Baltimore last year. So he'd definitely be someone I would be interested in as well. Musab, how about you, brother? Who are your defensive side realistic free agents for this offseason?
Yeah, well, first of all, I would love Jordan Whitehead back for all the same reasons Zach had mentioned as well. Yeah. Honestly, I mean, he's familiar with our team as well. An absolute stud. I still remember the first time I actually had watched him this season on the Jets. He racked up 3 interceptions against the Bills, and I was like, wow. Yeah, I remember my buddy was banging my line like, oh, wow, sucks to not have Whitehead anymore. Yeah. So what I will say is, look, New York could try to bring this guy back, but if the Jets let him slip, we should definitely be all over him for sure. Super valuable depth piece. Ryan Neal is likely gone. That leaves Christian Izzy, which I'm kind of iffy about as of right now. I don't want him to be our reliable guy. So we need a reliable guy. And if we want any kind of success, we need to fix this kind of DB unit for sure. With him and Whitehead, I think we can definitely do that for sure. Now, on the other hand, I'm thinking about an edge rusher as well. This one might be a little bit of a reach. We'll see. I don't know how it comes to the money situation. I didn't really look into his contract. But Jonathan Greenard from the Houston Texans, this guy racked up 12 sacks, tied like 10th in the league. Absolute beast. He's young, great against the run, racked up like 50 tackles in 2023. So overall, I think this is someone we definitely need based on the struggles we've had with our edge rushing. Logan Hall, JTS have been kind of duds. Not what we really, duds, not what we wanted. And it sucks because, we really invested our draft picks in these guys as well. It's one thing if we got these guys like, undrafted, but So I think it's time to finally fix things. And instead of kind of drafting another young guy, I think we need to value someone who's already, been in the NFL, who's already had experience. That's Jonathan Greenard. So those are my two guys on defense.
Yeah, I really like Jonathan Greenard. The Texans didn't franchise tag him, which is, good news for the Bucs if they're trying to sign him. Yeah, he had a really good year last year, and pass rushing is hard to come by. So he might be a little bit too pricey for the Bucs, but at the same time, he really only had that 1 year of really great production like that. So it could be kind of one of those middle ground. Maybe he gets a pillow deal where it's high on dollar amount, but it's only 1 year. It would really be interesting to see him in a Bucs uniform, though, for sure, because good Lord, the Bucs need some pass rushers. So yeah, that would be great. I would love to see Greenard in a Bucs uniform. Definitely a great pick, Musab. And I'll submit mine as well. I had three just because I love free agency, and they're all kind of weird guys. I don't know if they'll actually work out. My first one's Devin Bush.
Love that one.
Yeah, he was with Seattle. He was a first rounder out of Michigan. He was picked in that same Devin White class. I don't know that he's lived up to what Devin White has accomplished, because as much as we have hated on him, he has, for the most part, lived up to that first round billing. He's had some really productive years in a Bucs uniform. Devin Bush, unfortunately, just hasn't. He was with Pittsburgh, and then he moved to Seattle and was kind of just behind Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks all year. He'd be fine if David retires, which it's certainly a possibility, and good for him if he does. He would be kind of a decent second linebacker to bring in. Just kind of him and KJ Britt wouldn't be ideal, but it would work, I guess. And he won't be stupid expensive. He hasn't really had any productive years in the NFL. So it would be a very, very low cost option at the linebacker position. And then I got a couple edge rushers, Kalavon Chason. Oh God, I butchered his name.
But LSU guys? Wasn't he an LSU guy?
He was. And you know me, I love my LSU guys. So I'm sorry to Mr. KC, I'll call him.
Kalavon.
Yeah, same as Bush. He was a former first rounder, but didn't really pan out as well. The Jaguars drafted Trayvon Walker, and they also have Josh Allen, who's a pending free agent. So he might be a bit pricier than Bush simply because he's an edge rusher who was a former first round pick. So a team might be like, oh, let's give him a little bit of money. But he hasn't really shown anything, so maybe not. He can't really be a starter, but he'd kind of be like Anthony Nelson, just kind of a rotation guy, which you can never have enough pass rushers, so he'd be fine. And then Randy Gregory's the other one. He's more of a veteran, more of an established presence, but he kind of had a down year in San Francisco last year. They have so many pass rushers so that it's hard to fit in. But he could be moved back to he was playing in a 4-3 in San Francisco. Tampa Bay would shift him back to a 3-4 spot. So maybe that would be worth a deal just because it would be a little bit more of a comfort thing for him. But anyways, that's our realistic free agency.
Real quick, I want to throw one more in there because as I'm sitting here thinking, I was kind of surprised neither one of you guys would pick him up.
Oh, okay.
Drew Tranquil.
Oh, yeah. The Miami linebacker.
Or Kansas City.
Oh, Kansas City. My apologies.
Yeah, KC linebacker. He's a guy who literally, when it felt like whenever Kansas City needed a stop, he was there. And he's quick and can play pass coverage. I think he would fill a void in Tampa with Devin White gone. He would fill that Devin White void almost perfectly. I didn't put him on mine because I kind of thought he might be too expensive, considering he just won a Super Bowl and he played for Kansas City. So it's like he might be a little too expensive. But if he's not, I think he would be a great replacement for Devin White.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's kind of another one where maybe he'd take a pillow contract just to see if he can extend his value. But yeah, that's another great name to include as well. Yeah, a lot of options out there, fortunately, for the Bucs in positions of need. Like the safety market is going to be pretty rich. Like we haven't even mentioned the Buffalo Bills pair of safeties that are free agents. They might be a bit more expensive than the Bucs are willing to sign, but there's some. We'll get into our unrealistic free agents as well, but that would certainly be interesting. And starting off with the unrealistic free agents, we'll start on offense. I'll start. I'll kick things off. I've gone past two times. My first one's Cody Whitehair. He's an interior lineman from the Bears. He's fine. He hasn't. He's a bit older. He's a bit long in the tooth. He was released by Chicago, and he'll likely be in high demand because there's a lot of other contending teams that need interior O-line help. And you don't really necessarily see the Bucs shelling out too much money for this position, but he'd be a great left guard starter, just kind of a guy to plug in if they want to draft a project guy at that position, either of the guard positions or the center position in a pinch. So, he's just really durable, and he's played both guard and center. He has a Pro Bowl name, whatever that means. So that was kind of my big name was Cody Whitehair for the offensive side of the ball. But Musab, how about you, man? What are your unrealistic free agents options for the offense? Oh, you're muted, big dog.
Sorry, just realized.
There you go.
Apologies. Yeah. Well, for me, I'm just thinking it would be nice to kind of reach for maybe a little bit of a better running back. I'm thinking along the lines of like Josh Jacobs or Barkley or Derrick Henry out there, just because I'm thinking about the things we kind of need to just adjust or just, positions we need help with. And that's what I'm looking at right now. We got Evans back. I think, with Baker, Evans, Godwin, the pass game should be solid. I trust in our wide receiver 3, whoever that is. Now, Rachaad White's going to need some help. I definitely love what he's shown for us for sure, especially the second half of the season. But he can't do it all. So, yeah, those are my 3 guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any of them would be nice. Any of them, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure. How about you, Zach? What's your unrealistic offensive free agent?
I also went offensive line for my first one. Jonah Williams. He was a stud of Cincinnati, correct?
Yep.
He was a very good player in Cincinnati. I remember, I believe during the season we were talking about potentially trying to trade for him because they switched him around from position to a position he didn't want to play in. And at one point, I believe he requested a trade from Cincy. And I remember being very willing to trade for him because at that point we were struggling mightily on the offensive line. So he's my first one. And then, Musab nailed it on the head. Any of the big 3 running backs, in my opinion, but my main one was Saquon.
Yeah, Saquon's definitely going to be a hot name. I've heard him connected. You'll hear him connected to pretty much every good team. Because a lot of good teams need running backs. Because I know Zach Blaine doesn't want to hear this, but good teams don't draft running backs in the first rounds. But
anyway, you also said good teams need running backs. So,
but they're not doing it through the first round.
They're just paying them in free agency. I'd rather take them in the first round.
All right. Well, we could get into this philosophical debate later on in the offseason because I'm sure someone's going to spend a first round pick on a running back. It always happens.
I don't think so, man.
Yeah, this year's running back class is a little dry, but we'll get into that in our draft episode.
Well, we got draft
episodes if you want to hear that stuff. Yeah, that's right. But now we'll shift gears to the defensive side of the ball. I'll start it off again. Bobby Wagner is my guy on the defensive side. I just think him and David have had that experience. They're veteran guys. So even if David stays, Wagner could still be kind of a nice 1-year replacement for Devin White. But if David goes, then Wagner could be kind of a nice captain replacement, so to speak. But he's also really happy in Seattle. So I think that's the most likely scenario is returning there. I know Buffalo is also interested in bringing in a veteran linebacker. So he won't be expensive necessarily because of his age, but he also won't be cheap. That's for sure. But Zach, how about you, man? Who's your defensive option for the?
My defensive options. Number 1 just got released today. Cornerback, Mr. Tre'Davious White.
Ooh, going big. Okay.
Big. I think the best corner in free agency by far, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think he would instantly step in and be cornerback 1. I know in my mock draft this week, I put in Kool-Aid McKinstry going to us in the first round. But with that being said, I would still take Tre'Davious White if we could afford him.
Absolutely.
We will not be able to, but if we could, I would.
Sure.
My second one is also another Devin White replacement, someone who I think is going to get paid very handsomely this season, Patrick Queen from Baltimore.
Interesting. Very good. Very good.
He's one of my favorite linebackers in the league. I'm not a Baltimore fan, but he is one of my favorite linebackers in the league. He's one of those guys who didn't have a hot start right away, but his last season was phenomenal.
Where did he go to college?
Oregon State, I can tell you that much. You know what? I change it. I want Jordan Poyer. Oregon State guy just got released.
Oh, man.
I'll give it to LSU. The Patrick Queen is a stud, and I would love to have him as a replacement. Levante David's great, but he's getting up there. I'd almost put Patrick Queen at linebacker 1.
Wow, that's bold.
Only because of age, not because of like if it was prime, both of them were in their prime. I'm taking Levante David over anybody.
Fair enough. I like the Queen mention for sure. He might be a bit pricey, but hey, got to spend money to get money, as they say. So, Musab, how about you, brother? Who's your defensive unrealistic free agent targets?
Ooh, to be honest, I don't know how unrealistic this is, but it could be a reach for sure. I'm thinking Steven Nelson from the Houston Texans, going with another Texan as well, just because I think we need some help even with our cornerbacks.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah, so I mean, we don't really know what the situation right now with Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean, what's going to happen, and even our backups. It's a sticky situation. We definitely need some help. We need some experience as well. So Steven Nelson would be my guy.
Yeah, Steven Nelson's a good one. He was real good in Houston last year.
I don't know how unrealistic that is, though. That might be something that could happen.
You think?
Yeah.
He's a little older, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's definitely not like, Tre'Davious White's a little on the younger side, not by a whole lot.
Yeah.
What, 28 or 29, I think.
Right, for sure. So Steven Nelson could be really interesting. That's definitely a name to keep an eye on.
I don't hate that one at all. I actually really like that.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. So yeah, definitely some interesting names to keep an eye on. And if any of these guys end up signing with the Bucs, you heard it here first on RBLR. We are the ones that signed them, not Jason Light.
Coming to Tampa.
Yeah, we actually made the call right before the show. We called all these guys. We were like, "Hey, come to Tampa." But anyways, if you want more bold predictions like this, definitely hit that like and subscribe button. We're going to be doing a lot of draft shows coming up because it's going to be here sooner than y'all think, myself included in that statement. So definitely hit the like and subscribe button if you want to hear about that stuff. You can also give us a follow on the social medias at RBLR Sports, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. You can find our mock drafts there as well. We post one a week. We try to do it on Monday every week. Musab and Zach have been doing it mostly for the past few weeks, but hey, I might throw one in there this next
time, Carter.
That's right. I think it's my time to step up. So definitely be on the lookout there as well for that. And we'll be back next week with some draft stuff. Maybe I don't know. You'll have to tune in to find out.
Don't tease right. Much. God, Carter.
I know. I'm sorry,
Carter.
I know. I'm sorry, guys. But anyways, definitely stay tuned in. Hit that like and subscribe button. Like I said, we appreciate y'all for listening though, and listening to us ramble on about happenings in the Bucs world. And we'll come back at you next week. But for now, and as always.
Go Bucs.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.